At the end of the War of 1812, America came out prosperous, with an overall urge of patriotism and a sense of nationality. One example of America being so united and the overall consensus of patriotism was the emergence of the Star-Spangled Banner. Emerging from the war, America now had a single party or a single faction. Previously, we had two parties. However, the Federalists were dissolved due to the fact that they looked like traitors post the War of 1812. Although there was only one party now, they were divided into two groups. The first were the Democratic Republicans, and the second were the Nationalist Republicans. And although they were one party, they had differing views on how to govern and just different beliefs. The Democratic Republicans would be represented by someone like Thomas Jefferson, and the Nationalist Republicans would be represented by someone like John Quincy Adams. And those two were actually notoriously known for a constant bicker between beliefs and fundamental governing systems. So one difference between the Democratic Republicans and the Nationalist Republicans is the Democratic Republicans were largely in favor of American republicanism, which was really stressing the fact of liberty. And at that time, liberty was living on land that you owe no debt, and you have absolutely the freedom to be the farmer that you are without owing the government anything. And it was really against aristocracy and inherited political power. Additionally, Democratic Republicans were super in favor of state rights. They believed that states were responsible for all the rights, and that the government, they did not want the federal government to be able to have more power than the states. And they really, really emphasized the 10th Amendment, which the Nationalist Republicans would more lean towards the Interstate Commerce Act, which allowed more government intervention, which gave the government more power rather than the states. Another difference between the Democratic Republicans and the Nationalist Republicans were the Democratic Republicans really, really valued their rural lifestyle. They believed that themselves, as the yeoman farmer, were superior to someone who wanted to live in the complexity of a large city with banks and factories, that it was better to live a basic life, support yourself, be free from any authoritarian government. On the other side of the spectrum, the Nationalist Republicans also had their ideas that differed from what the fundamental party beliefs were. And they really would agree with what Henry Clay established would be as the American system, which was pro-national bank, pro-tariffs, and it would want to invest in infrastructure. The National Federalists were incredibly in favor of tariffs. They were in favor of tariffs because they protected northern industry by allowing them a chance against international foreign companies that were already well established. However, at the same time, by protecting the northern industries, they were hurting the farmers because the machinery the farmers needed were now more expensive because the Europeans' price would be raised due to the tariffs. This was a big difference between the Democratic Republicans and the Nationalist Republicans. Although the Nationalist Republicans and the Democratic Republicans did have their differences, they did have their similarities at the same time. After all, they are under one party. And one was a strong urge of American nationalism. They believed that the unity of Americans together formed the nation that promoted democracy and as just the strongest, strong nation. Additionally, they were very, very in favor in just classic fundamental liberalism. They believed that the most small amount of government was the best. However, the Nationalist Republicans believed that the government should have a little more power than the Democratic Republicans believed they should, because the Nationalists saw examples like Shays' Rebellion and saw that the central government was necessary. However, they did agree with the Democratic Republicans that to make it as limited as possible while still having a functioning democracy. Although both sides, whether it's Democratic Republican or Nationalist Republican, provide good reasoning for how our republic should face the problems that we're facing after the War of 1812, I would have to side with the Nationalist Republicans for three reasons. One, I disagree with the Democratic Republicans' emphasis for state rights. Two, for their huge push for republicanism. And three, I agree with the nationalist reasoning for tariffs. So first, state rights. Although it would be great for every state to have their own laws and their own way they want to govern, it simply would be too hard when you're a brand new republic and you're facing all these problems. It is far easier to have a centralized government who can have basic laws and fundamental rules that every state can follow, and therefore can make your republic more united as one. Additionally, I disagree with the republicanism statement. Although it is great to have liberty and it's great to have, undistinguishable rights, so many rights that you don't even have to write them all down, it does face problems. Like back when, with the Shays' Rebellion, if you give them too many rights and you don't have any authority, you're going to have rebellions and you're not going to be able to control your people. So for those two reasons, I disagree with the Democratic Republicans. And the Nationalist Republicans' emphasis for tariffs, I agree with, because they establish a strong international trade between America and other countries. And during the time and all the way up till now, if you don't have trade with other countries, it's very hard to prosper, because there will always be some resource or something that your country cannot produce as well as another country. And it is good for political and economic purposes that you have your companies prosperous in other countries, therefore the tariffs supporting our companies. So for those three reasons, I would have to agree with the Nationalist Republicans.